Although I know very little about prehistoric mammals, I do have some favorites, which I've begun making headway on in my self-learning journey. Just as well, because Haolonggood seems to have started a new run of non-dinosaur models. And of course, proboscideans would inevitably feature. We've seen the woolly mammoth, and today I'm delighted to say we have probably my favorite proboscidean, the murmacil-like Stegotetrabelodon. The name Stegotetrabelodon breaks down rather awkwardly into roofed four-arrowed tooth, from the Greek stegos, meaning roof, tetra, meaning four, belos, meaning dart or arrow, and odus, meaning tooth. Like the woolly mammoth, Stegotetrabelodon actually belongs to Elephantidae, but more than that, it's believed to be the earliest elephantid, so that makes it an especially significant animal. Now this model measures 16 centimeters or 9.5 inches long, measured in a straight line from rump to the beginning of the trunk. For shelf space, from the tusk point to the rear of the foot, you'll need 23.5 centimeters or 9¼ inches. And at the shoulder, it stands 11 centimeters or 4.3 inches tall. Stegotetrabelodon cyrticus was about 4 meters at the shoulder, and Stegotetrabelodon emiratus was 3.7 meters. Now based on height at the shoulder, this model would be about 1:36 for cyrticus and 1:34 for emiratus. And here are the wonder artistic model humanoids at 1:37 and 1:35 for you to make the decision yourselves. Now this model, like most Haolonggoods, come in two variants. Now for the mammals, for the sake of space and my wallet, I was aiming to get just one variant. But I like this genus so much, and the paint application already looks so good in the release images, I had to get both. Now that I have, I'm glad I did. You have the brown and the grey. Now I think here you already get a taste of the color application quality. And even the pose isn't the routine amble, but with these staggered limbs gives you an impression of action, like an animal standing its ground, ready for action or perhaps trouble. There's an alert and nervous energy about it that just promises action. Now let's take a closer look at the grey. And as always, we start at the head. And of course here you see the detail already. The grey is not uniform. The cooler charcoal shades remains around the eye and cheek, while you see warmer grey beige and muted pink tones appear across the muzzle, the ear, and the center of the trunk, breaking up the grey for more visual aesthetics. You can see the spotting in different sizes, covering the forehead, the ears, and the trunk. But I like little details like this. But I have to say that some of them look like watermarks and are a little unnatural. The eye has a slight gloss, and I have to say that Haolonggood has come a long way when it comes to eyes that look more convincing. Now we get to the main event of the animal, those 4 tusks, and they curve very gently upwards towards the tips. Now fortunately and fittingly, the paint application is very nice. The darker grey-brown of the roots fade gradually through the tan and the cream towards the tips. You also see fine longitudinal streaks and kind of a marble markings running through the pale colour. And this gives it a natural variation within the ivory. The shorter lower pair emerge from the jaw region and run beneath the upper tusks, really looking collectively like a dangerous array of spears. I like that these are in fact quite sharp, so not child safe, but that reinforces the reality of the illusion. The trunk has that trumpeting pose that's so popular in proboscidean depictions, broad at the base and narrows as it rises into a very pronounced upward curl. You see deep transverse folds running along its length, and you also see finer grooves and pits covering the intervening surfaces. In general, you'll see plenty of detail and also color variation. The columnar limbs are convincingly proportioned for weight bearing, with larger folds around the shoulders and arm, and finer lines near the joints. Now I think the nails are still individually sculpted. Unfortunately, the paint over them is just one simple flat white slapped on with no color variations. So some of you might want to improve this on your own. A thin wash of just one different shade would elevate them considerably. The cooler grey forms the main foundation, while the warmer grey-brown spreads across different parts to varying degrees. The transitions are soft with no sharp borders, creating a gentle layered appearance. And similar to the forelimbs, the hind limbs are sufficiently broad and weight-bearing, with larger folds where appropriate. But again, the same flat paint for the nails. Now the staggered limb positions really suggest massive weight support convincingly. The tail is thin and lightly textured, and the end tuft divides in a rather curious way, with two separate projections that give it a grasper-like appearance. Now the brown version shares the same sculpt, so there's no need to repeat the details. We'll just do a quick once-over to see how the warmer palette looks on this sculpt. The head is a kind of a dark charcoal brown overlaid with more muted shades of red-brown. Now these tones blend nicely across the forehead. The cheeks, the ears, and the trunk. And unlike the grey version, there's no conspicuous spotting. As for the tusks, they may look even better on this version. The dark roots transition gradually into the tan and pale ivory, with finer grey-brown marbling staining the lighter surfaces. I really like this, gives it a very natural lifelike appearance. Looks like living tissue. Then in the body, you see how the warmer red-brown tones appear around the shoulders, I dare say I saw some minor cracks, but nothing like what we get in their larger sauropods. The abdomen, the brown version hides some of that fine detail, but as I said before, I think that kind of obscureness makes it more like a real animal, since not all living animals are conveniently colored to show off their skin textures. Overall, a really nice and pleasing sculpt, and I'm really happy to have this. Again, it's probably my favorite proboscidean other than Dinotherium at the moment. So let's do some comparisons. Now comparing to each other, you see they look really good. And whichever one you get, I think you'll be very happy. If you get both, each has enough to hold your attention. The grey version is perhaps more immediately striking, with contrasting light patches lending much visual interest. And of course we saw details like the spotting, which add visual interest. The brown version, however, has plenty of colour complexity, though it looks a bit more unified. In both, of course, you see the 4 spears given due justice. And really looking at both, they don't feel like duplicates to me. And now we have the more obvious Din 1 Studios Stegotetrabelodon. Up to this point, perhaps my favorite proboscidean model. And you see here, when I assembled the model, I chose to orient the tusks curving downward because that was how they appeared in the original release images. And while more dramatic and fantasy-like, there are proboscideans like Gomphotherium, often shown with downward curving upper tusks. In retrospect, I might have chosen the more conservative option and angled them curving upward instead. I estimate this to be about 1:25, and it's obviously taller and more upright with a heavier chest and shoulders. It's also interesting to see the difference between cooler and warmer greys. Now obviously it's a much more expensive model, and yet in the Haolonggood it's clear that nowadays the standards are so high that the difference between models from Haolonggood and PNSO and higher end models isn't as high as it once was, giving collectors a much more affordable entry into high quality model collecting. For another 4-tusker, here's my collecting Gomphotherium. Now unfortunately, I have no idea where I put my Eofauna Conobelodon, so here's the always awesome Eofauna Paleoloxodon. And really nice how they've captured the parieto-occipital crest here. And here's Eofauna's take on perhaps my sometimes favourite proboscidean, Dinotherium. Just look at how unusual its proportions are, and you can see the relatively large, massive head of the elephantids compared with the smaller looking head and perhaps more elongated proportions of this separate proboscidean lineage. Then here's Haolonggood's last proboscidean, the woolly mammoth. Man, I really love the colour on these guys. And here's the Haolonggood's Paraceratherium. You see how massive this animal truly was. How about a comparison with an extant large African bull elephant from Collectae? And finally, a comparison with the T-Rexes. Here's the PNSO Wilson. Man, just look how big T-Rex truly was. And here's the PNSO Cameron. So all in all, that's Haolonggood's Stegotetrabelodon. It's long been my favorite proboscidean, although Dinotherium does occasionally take the top spot. Depending on my mood. There's just something endlessly fascinating about it. And of course, the Mumakil-like appearance that makes the four tuskers a real crowd pleaser. I'm really happy to see a mainstream Stegotetrabelodon of this caliber that almost everyone will be able to afford and enjoy. So that's all for this one. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.